Welcome, Wargamers, to an episode that I have been excited to do for some time, and that's coming back to the Seraphon with their new battle tome. And I want to say up front that I already did a Seraphon week with the old book, and I'll leave a link to that down in the description down below. And the reason I point that out is because GW went really hard into fleshing this faction's lore out, way more than I expected it to, so we're going to talk a lot about it. And that's when it comes to like Seraphon as a whole, right? Capital S Seraphon. However, the roles of individual units didn't honestly change very much, so those videos are still a valuable resource for you if you're trying to learn about all the different nitty-gritty things about the Seraphon. But there's going to be about 2 to 3 episodes, not sequential, but over the course of this week, where we're going to be unpacking this new vision for one of the coolest and most mysterious armies in the mortal realms. Now, the term Seraphon is a very broad one, right? It's kind of like saying greenskins in any, Games Workshop intellectual property, right? Because it refers to a bunch of stuff, bunch of subspecies that we have one name for. Namely, Seraphon is representing skinks, saurs, and slann, as well as a host of other little monsters and that kind of stuff, brutes and beasts that are closely held to this faction. Their story is an ancient one, dating far back before the time of gods and maybe even the realms themselves. For if you didn't know, what we call the Seraphon were once the lizardmen of the old world, right? That was their army name in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Which, if that sounds shocking, believe me, there's a lot of folks out there who didn't know about fantasy battles that are coming into AOS. And I'm going to give you the most condensed version of that incarnation that I can offer, but if you look up lore videos for lizardmen, you will find a lot more resources there on YouTube. Put simply, this was a race that was specifically engineered for a purpose, and that is to stomp out and contain chaos. They were genetically crafted by a mysterious race called the Old Ones, and no one but possibly the Slann themselves really know who they are or where they went. But the Old Ones were restless in their fight against the primordial powers of chaos. The Lizardmen, as we knew them then, were put on the Old World in an effort to contain the chaos blight there. They didn't have families or socialize hardly at all. They were created in these mass spawning pools, which we'll talk about more of these, sub-classifications and how they fit into that style of life in another video. But understand the core idea here is they are a race that was made with a purpose, and that purpose is to stop chaos. Now, as we know, many things in the old world did not go super well, and ultimately the forces of chaos under the leadership of Archaon broke that planet apart at the seams. Before its collapse, the Slann, which is the fat toads in their little flying seats, called all living lizardmen into their fortress temple ziggurat things, and they began to raise from the earth, heading towards the heavens. How exactly they ended up in the mortal realms is really a matter of debate and mystery. Lots of scholars who know about the Old Ones, or at least the Old World, have tried to figure it out. The dominant theory is that the Slann ordered their servants into a form of, suspended animation, ready to be reborn from spawning pools in the future. And the ships drifted in space, right out in the void itself, for a long while with only their lonely Slann occupants, until Dracothian, a god beast living in the heavens that has had, an immense impact on the story of Age of Sigmar, once again breathed life into these crude starships. Thus, the lizardmen of the old world became the Seraphon as we know them now in Age of Sigmar. A starfaring race that was, designed genetically from the ground up to fight chaos, and now they've just come into contact with the realms and see chaos kind of budding there as well. The skinks and saurs were once again reawakened, right, pouring from their spawning pools, the infinite power of Azir, the realm of heavens, reactivating these long dormant ships. There was just something about the realm of Azir that really related to these creatures. Maybe it's because, the old ones were from the skies and the heavens and the void, and so they have kind of this intrinsic link to them where they didn't ever have that connection in the old world. Something like that. Or maybe it's because the old ones used Azir magic in their creation, or maybe it's just that Dracothian found them first and he's super into Azir. But as they were spawning and rebuilding, the magic of the realm of heavens deeply infused itself within the Seraphon. Right? Starlight flowed from their veins, they sort of lost some of their more like corporeal existence, becoming like solidified like light more than they are reptiles. Now, if you remember the older battle tome, these were very much the order demons, if you will, right, where demons are made of pieces of the chaos god broken off and formed into a sort of living thing. So too, these first Seraphon in the old battle tome were more like constructs of Azir magic in reptile form than being flesh and blood creatures. These we know as the Starborn, right? Seraphon that are tied intrinsically to the realm of heavens. And we'll talk in just a brief second about the Seraphon that leave Azir for an extended time, but I wanted to touch on one thing here, and this is the Seraphon described in this way are the ones from the first battle tome, right? Beings of light and memory, recalled and thrust into battle by the whims in the mind of a Slann. They bleed starlight, they functionally act like demons, for sure, of Azir, but they lack true substance, right? So they can be pulled across the battlefield by their lords with their space and time magic. And if you want to learn more about this, that video series that I linked down below really does a great job of explaining as much as we knew back then. Functionally, what GW did was take that initial idea of like the Starborn as we know them, but it needed some tuning. It needed to be fleshed out a bit more, and we'll explore that in future videos. But what they did was they added an alternate option. The alternate option is, well, that's how they were when they were all from Azir, but now that things have progressed, they've moved out to other realms. What happens when they leave Azir? So, like, those that are the Starborn, Seraphon that remain in Azir to, like, flood their spawning pools with the magic of the heavens, what happens when they leave? Right, the plans and machinations of the Slann take these warriors far and wide, and in those journeys many temples find homes amongst the other realms, crafting and shaping them to resemble a home they left long ago. Well, as we've explored in other like lore series, the realms change you the longer you stay in them. The Seraphon have the most notable change in Azir, like we just talked about, becoming Starborn, but in other realms something strange happens. The once vibrant magic of the heavens begins to weaken, and the Seraphon have more substance in their reality. They do become the stuff of flesh and blood, cold blood to be specific. They become the lizardmen of the old world, right? What we would now call the Coalesced, because they fully solidified amongst this new reality. They still have spawning pools and Slann, and this great design to stop chaos, but they do it from specific places amongst the realms, becoming the savage predators in this new reality, right? And they forego a lot, right? They don't teleport, they don't bleed starlight, but they gain much more in terms of raw strength and grit. If you are looking for an army that most closely represents its old world counterpart, this is a great choice, right? Skaven's up there as well, but this is a great contender for when they park their ship somewhere else other than Azir, they become pretty much as we know them, the Seraphon from the old world. The Coalesced really resemble that race that was knocked off course right from their big plan by the end times, but has been brought back to its original vision and purpose in the mortal realms. Now, there's a lot to talk about, right? We're going to talk about the old ones and their creation, like how these starships work and how they relate to other races, and really how the Necroquake has affected them. But I wanted to start very simply with this video, because as you approach the army and try to learn about it, the divide between Starborn and Coalesced is now a defining feature, right? It's how they fit into the lore and play on the table. Like I said before, what they really did was the old battle tome, now just consider that Starborn, and they've added on this second branch of Seraphon so that you can really flesh out whatever lore that you want to create for your army. And so let's stop there and talk about why is this cool, right? This is the big change that they added to the lore of the book to really sink its teeth into. I will say they also added a bunch of those little like short story snippets to give you more of a setting of like how the Seraphon actually interact in the realms. And what I will think of, the first thing I thought of when I was reading this, they really remind me of Eldar. If you don't know, Eldar and 40k have a loose version of being able to tell the future. There's still time to change things. And they use that, and they have these big, long, century-long plans, and they can see, okay, if this civilization is allowed to, habitate this planet, it'll have an ill effect on our big plan. Let's go wipe them out. And that's like why the Eldar fight people, is they see a bigger vision going on. All that to say, it's a very much a similar thing here where they've introduced this idea of the Great Plan, and it allows you within that plan to have Seraphon who want to do just about anything, who want to go stake out parts, special places in, say, Akshi, for the sake of making sure that the machinations happening here go through without problems, or you can stay in Azir and just teleport around. My point being that divergence, right, of now adding a second branch to the tree, so having coalesced exist, opens up a wide variety of ties to the realms, and really I think firmly plants them more in the setting. So that's something I really enjoy. Anytime, and I've mentioned this in other videos, anytime they do a good job of putting the characters, fitting them into the mortal realms, I think is a true win. That's what I think the real power of a battle tome should be. I also like the fact they brought back spawning pools. I love the idea that they're just manufactured, but there's a limit to the manufacturing, right? Only so many skinks can come through, and if they push it too hard, there's defects in them and that kind of thing. I love it. It's so rad. It's one of the coolest things from the old world. There certainly was. And I just like the imagery around that. So I think it was really awesome. Also, what I will say is, from a army perspective, one of the things that I liked about them in the old world was that it's kind of like everything is just kind of built around the Slann, right? There's a central hero who's your, theoretical powerhouse, and then an army built around them, protecting him, serving him, making his will happen. And I feel like they really kept that in this book. Even when they added an entire new, design second half of the army, I really feel like they maintained that great thing of this is our Slann. He defines the characters and characteristics of our little army here, our temple, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that is really cool. Maintaining that feel of having a central mind and an army around them, I thought that was a win. It's a great way to do it. And lastly, I just want to point out, one thing that I've always wanted from a Seraphon book was that it included more of the other races. That was a little bit hard when the first one came out, because at that time, I think they were the third battle tome. There's Stormcast and Bloodbound came out at once, and then Seraphon were the first of the old factions to get a book. And so I think just because they didn't have enough to talk about, but now they do. Right now, all these little stories in the battle tome have them relating to other factions, even if it's just this one little entry that I liked where it's there's monks in Hysh that just sit under the stars and contemplate the heavens, and they are the foremost experts on Seraphon because they are seeing the same things that they see. Omens and portents all written in the skies and the order of the universe. And that kind of stuff is really cool. Whereas when the first edition of this book came out, Hysh was never a word uttered, and certainly we didn't know about monks and that kind of stuff. So I absolutely thought that was all super rad. I would definitely still want to see more Black Library books where these guys are included, but they definitely did, at least if you're comparing it to other battle tomes who fit their armies in the greater setting. I think they did a great job. It's at least on par where you're oh, okay, this is a thing that exists, right? People know about these things. So anyway, friends, those are my first thoughts cracking into the Seraphon battle tome. I had an immense amount of fun just reading this and kind of seeing how they added so much to the faction without taking away the things that if you liked the as we know them now, the Starborn, you lost nothing, but you gained a whole bunch more fun and things to try and experiment with. That's the kind of stuff I like to see when I get a battle tome. And so what I'd like to know down below is, are you a Seraphon player? How do you feel about the addition of the Coalesced, right? Is that something you were excited for because you liked the old world themes? Or are you oh, that's really cool, but I liked my Starborn stuff, right? Well, what we now know as Starborn, what used to be all of Seraphon. Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it, because there's a lot of opinions online that are well, I think this about the Seraphon. Do you play them? No. Okay, that's fine. You're still valid, but I want to hear from Seraphon players, so let me know, and we'll chat in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and happy wargaming.